So this Lent, which only started last week, we are working around the dual themes of temptation and giving up something for Lent. And by giving up something for Lent, I do not mean simple things that will make no real difference to your lives, like chocolate. I mean important things. It's okay, Rose. I mean important things that allow us to find new life. Important things that may help us connect with the peace of God in important ways. Important things that may help us understand the word resurrection in a new way this year. In our society, we often feel our lives would be better if we had more, right? Like wanting more money or more time. But in truth, for most of us, what will make our lives better is not usually having more. For most of us, what we actually need is to have less. But less of the right things, of course. Less of the things that weigh us down. Things like negativity, resentment, anger, being judgmental, feelings of superiority, feelings of inferiority. Perhaps something else that is causing you pain. Giving up something for Lent actually makes a lot of sense. So a few weeks ago, I imagined the theme for this service being Lent, give up your need for control. And I thought, well, that's a great headline. But what does it mean? What does it mean in practice? And first of all, to state probably the obvious, giving up our need for control does not mean giving up control. I'm certainly not going to advocate we all become mindless wanderers who simply do what other people tell us what to do. The problem is needing control. And the problem with needing control is, well, we have to work up to it, I think. Because to start with, who here this morning believes you're in control of your own life? I don't expect a show of hands. You guys know me too well. But who here decided exactly how old you want to be today? Anyone? Who here decided what time of day they want it to be right now? Anyone? Who here decided your skin color? Did you decide what country to be born into? Did you decide what religion to be born into? Did you decide for yourself whether or not to be born into a rich or a poor family? Nobody is truly in control of their external reality. And we see this in our reading from Luke, too. Where Jesus wants to be like a hen protecting her brood, but the chicks, meaning the people of Jerusalem, constantly go their own way. Jesus would not, could not, and did not control the people. Jesus lives, therefore, deep feelings of longing and regret. Jesus imagines something better for the people than the people can imagine for themselves. And so Jesus grieves for the people, as we read this morning. Thank you, Demas. Jesus really wanted the people to behave, but Jesus had to give up or learn to live with being disappointed with his desire to control the people. And I want to be a little more precise in my language, because I want to be clear, I'm a huge fan of self-control. I mean, self-control is a good thing. And I point that out because human nature tends to tell us the opposite, I think. Anybody controlling the rain? My observation, dealing with many people over the years, is that when people say they want more control in life, they almost never mean they want more self-control. What they want is more control over other people. They want to control external reality, which is a real pity, because self-control is the only type of control we can always control. I'm reminded of a story that none of you will believe about an office employee in a large company. The employee started working for the company with high hopes, not only for meaningful work, but for friendships and relationships. But they soon discovered in their building many employees created a very toxic work environment. There was lots of negative talk, tons of gossip, tons of drama. Well, at one point the employee went to HR and said, "I can't take it here anymore. I really have to quit." HR asked why, and the employee named in great detail the nature of the toxic work environment, none of which was news to the HR person. The HR person said, "Well, if you want to leave, of course you can do this, but first I want to ask you to do something simple." And the HR person asked the employee to take a glass and fill it right to the brim with water and to walk around their work floor 3 times without spilling any water. The employee thought this is nuts, but they respected the HR person, thought it's only going to take a few minutes anyway. So they did, and they did not spill any water as they walked around. So they went back to HR to report their great success. And HR asked, well, when you were walking around with your water, did you notice any toxic behaviors? No. HR said, well, sure, because when you walked with your very full glass of water trying not to spill it, you actually focused on the task at hand and you didn't have any energy left, any energy to waste on what other people were doing. That's why you didn't notice any toxic behaviors, because surely they were still there. And if you did the same thing in your work, you focused on your own actual activity, you wouldn't notice as many toxic behaviors either. Or at least what you noticed would not impact you so much. To improve your work environment, you do not need to control all your coworkers. You just need to focus on your job. The employee stayed and made a good career in the company. When we focus on our own priorities, we don't have time and attention to pay attention to all the drama around us, the mistakes that other people make, the gossip, politics, negativity. If we focus on our own priorities, our own growth, our own peace of mind, we won't be as much impacted by the negativity that surrounds us all. Do you really want more control in your life? Start by working on self-control. In fact, here's a fun little exercise we can all try next time it rains, which could be today. Next time it rains, go for a walk. And while you're walking, remind yourself repeatedly how much you hate the rain, how much you hate getting wet, how much you actually look down on people who have to walk in the rain because clearly they have no alternatives. Walk for at least 20 minutes and make sure you're absolutely miserable while you do it. And now turn around and head back home. But as you return back, you have to come back on the same route. You have to be out there for 20 minutes. As you return, remind yourself how much you loved the rain when you were a kid, right? You're probably already soaked at this point, so go ahead, splash in the puddles. Skip, dance, sing. Relish the feel of the cool rain hitting your face. Open yourself to the joys of walking in the rain, and make sure you feel happy when you do it. Now, seriously, try this exercise sometime and let me know how you feel about it. Or alternatively, tell me how you feel about me for even suggesting it. The point is that the difference between the person who is sad in the rain and the person who is happy in the rain has nothing to do with the rain. It's the same rain. The difference is our ability to let go, to control everything, and to simply be present in the moment. The simple truth is when we choose to exercise self-control, we can enjoy life usually pretty well. And if we let external things dictate our feelings, well, we're probably going to be miserable most of the time. Now, I'm sure that office example sounded very contrived and forced to you, so I want to share a true story from my own life. Because as a minister, I've been to many hospitals to make visits, of course. And I remember in a former congregation, a period of about 5 weeks, when I visited 2 members of the congregation who were in the same hospital at the same time. And over those 5 weeks, I got to know them both pretty well. Not only were they in the same hospital, they had almost identical medical conditions, which meant they were on the same floor, they were in the same unit. They were, in fact, right across the hall from each other. They had the same nursing staff, they got the same food, they got the same visits from the same minister with the same lousy sense of humor. The family and social situations were quite similar too, actually. They were about equally resourced. Each of them had a daughter who lived nearby and came to visit every single day. Each of them had a son who lived further away but came once a week. From an external perspective, these 2 people were in a very similar situation. But when I visited them, they were in completely different worlds. I'm going to go back to this picture because it speaks to the story. One person complained about absolutely everything. The nurses were terrible, the food was atrocious, their family never came to see them. This person actually told me while I was standing in her room, she never got any visits. The person never asked about their church friends or anyone else. They was completely absorbed in their own situation. The other person was grateful for just about everything. They wouldn't shut up about how much they appreciated the visits from their family and from me. They reported getting excellent care from the staff and the nurses. They always asked me about their church friends. How are they doing? How are they doing? They always asked me how I was doing. They expressed their caring for other people. Their love emanated from their hospital bed like a beacon. And yes, they even said the food was actually pretty good. I remember those visits well. I gave each of them the same amount of time and caring every week, and I learned a lot about the value of self-control. Self-control helped one of those people find inner peace during their hospital stay. And self-control helped me provide good care to two people when, on the surface, one was much easier to care for than the other. I also remember a person I used to visit with in prison, and I saw him weekly for about 7 months, so I got to know him quite well. This guy looked like an ox. He was shorter than me, but I think he could bench press my car. He told me he could drop and do 400 push-ups, and I had no reason to doubt him. He was tough. He was impenetrable, which is exactly what I expected for someone who was seriously let down to defend himself from the age of 4. He literally had to be tough or die. And when I met him, he was really into control for good reasons. And my main journey with him was to redirect his need for control into his growing, actually, ability to exert self-control. Well, why are we driven to control things in the first place? Psychologists seem to converge on two basic theories. One theory is the need for control comes from a time in our lives when something bad happened because we, or if we were younger, a parent, could not control reality and things did not go well. This was certainly the story of my friend in prison. The other theory is that the need for control comes because we fundamentally believe the universe is out to get us, and that therefore our whole lives we have to be in a defensive posture. Therefore, control is seen as very important. Or you may have your own theory. But I'm happy to say, regardless of whatever theory you're thinking of, I think the main driver for our need for control is based on fear. When Jesus wanted to protect his little flock, when you read it, you hear the fear in Jesus' voice. Jesus was fearful for them. Jesus feared his flock would not learn what they needed to learn while Jesus was still with them. So giving up our need for control involves giving up or at least learning to live with our fears. I didn't say this was easy, did I? And if that sounds too scary, go with plan B, which is transform your need to control other people into building up and celebrating your own self-control. This might sound a little bit theoretical, I suppose, but in fact it's something we're all very familiar with. Think back to the pandemic, particularly the early days of the pandemic, if that's not too triggering. The pandemic was an external force that created a great deal of fear and loss of control for most of us. For me, my summary of the pandemic, at least looking back, I'm not sure if I looked at it this way at the time, is to say we can complain about the wind or we can learn to adjust our sails. Because during the pandemic, many people learned to adjust their sails and then adjust them again and again and again. For those of us willing to adjust our sails, we actually got a fair bit of practice. And many times in our own lives, external forces create fear and loss of control in us. I mean, the pandemic is one obvious example. Other examples include prolonged illness, death of a loved one, relationship issues, lots of things really. Many people are fearful right now, they tell me, because of the tariff insanity that may or may not even be happening with our friends to the south. Many things really cause fear and loss of control in our lives. Those external factors are like the wind. They're beyond our control. But when we're sailing, we can adapt and adjust our sails. And the key is if we do, we can still get to where we need to go. And I want to take this sailing analogy just a little bit further. Because, of course, it's true we don't control the wind, and it's true we can learn to adjust our sails, and it's true we can still get to where we need to go. But sometimes people say, well, how do you learn to adjust your sails? I used to sail myself, and I learned to sail from the wind. When you're sailing, you actually use the wind to learn how to manage the wind. And similarly, when external forces threaten us, we can run away from our misfortunes, or we could choose to learn from them. And I hope we always try to learn from our misfortunes. We long for control in life, but we really do not need to control external reality completely. We need to be masters of self-control and to learn what we can from reality, particularly when we don't like it. And what will we do with our self-control? Perhaps we can focus on what matters most to us, our relationships, our caring for each other and our community. Because in the end, what else do we really need anyway? The Lenten journey continues. What will you give up this week? What will you give up that will give you more joy, more of the peace of God? What will you give up so you can understand the word resurrection more deeply? This week, I would propose we give up our need for control and we work on self-control. Lent continues. You can already tell by now next week, I'll invite you to give up something else. We're all in it together, me too. Amen.